Well, right now it is time to bring in Arthur Schwartz. It's time for the food maven, Arthur Schwartz, who joins us every Monday morning, and we talk food, we talk recipes, and we say good morning and happy holidays, Arthur.
All together now. I can't believe it's Christmas already. As you get older,
it's true.
Time warps.
No, it's
somehow.
it's absolutely
true. I
true.
had no idea, but I'm prepared. I'm prepared as a Jewish man to avoid Christmas. And we're going to do something that is a joke, but not a joke. We're going to go eat Chinese food and go to a movie. On the other hand, we have a new theater in Park Slope that I'm dying to go to. It used to be the worst theater in the world. We stopped going there, and so did everybody else, which is why it was a 2-year conversion to a Nighthawk theater. Nighthawk is this hipster place in Williamsburg, which I've never been able to get into because it's a tiny theater, but this is going to have 6 or 7 screens. And you eat in the theater if you like. And you can drink in the theater if you like. So, but as a child, Christmas to me, because we didn't celebrate it in my house, Christmas to me was going to my Aunt Pauline for a real Christmas feast. She married a Catholic man, I think, my theory. He was a lovely, lovely guy. But my theory is that she really needed to have a Christian husband so she could do Christmas. Because she decorated it was all really tacky, cheesy, commercial decorations. It wasn't like she was a creative decorator, as some, people I know, where they make their decorations or they have a certain style. No, she just went out and bought every Christmas decoration you could think of. And then she made this sensational Christmas dinner, the main feature of which was, and I keep meaning to call my cousin and to ask her if she has any more recollection of this than I do, meaning my aunt's daughter and Pauline's daughter. But I haven't done it yet, but I will. Because my aunt had a whole, what we called then a fresh ham. It's really just pork, it's the butt end of a pig. But in this case, not cured. And when we say ham in America, we mostly think of cured meat. So this was not. This was fresh pork. And the butcher would bone out the central bone, and which would leave a big cavity. Maybe she enlarged it somewhat with a knife. And she would stuff that and roast this whole ham stuffed with a bread stuffing. I'm sure there was onion and celery and sage, the sort of Thanksgiving flavors. Well, what I associate with Thanksgiving, and then I don't know if I don't know which came first. That these were my father's favorite things, or she made them because she knew they were my father's favorite things. But we always had the best mashed potatoes of my life, and she always had made a gravy. So it was divine. And then for dessert, I don't remember vegetables in those days. Vegetables didn't seem so important, I don't think, as for me they do now. And as for most of my family, we want a few vegetables. But I don't remember, so that's another thing my cousin may remember. But dessert I definitely remember, because it was a pudding feast. We would have chocolate pudding, tapioca pudding, rice pudding. There must have been something, and I'm sure there were cookies because my aunt was a wonderful baker. So I'm sure we had an array of Christmas cookies, and who needed any more? Oh yeah, I'm sure there was also a big bowl of whipped cream on the table, because my father's favorite thing was chocolate pudding with either whipped cream or just liquid sweet cream. Like if my mother made chocolate pudding during the week, which she did from time to time, just as a treat, my father would have it by putting his spoon in the pudding and then pouring over some heavy cream, letting it seep into the cracks that he'd created with the spoon. That he was a very particular eater, my father. So anyway, that's what I associate with Christmas.
It's funny you
But
mentioned
these
that.
days, the big deal thing here in New York City, and I guess other places around the country, I'm sure, is all these restaurants serving what they call the feast. It's tonight, actually, not tomorrow. It's a Christmas Eve dinner, the Feast of the Seven Fishes. Now, this is a strictly Italian-American concept. And the concept is, well, let me start with, it stems from a real Southern Italian tradition, which is called La Vigilia, the vigil. And tonight is a vegetarian a night for Catholics because you can eat meat after midnight Mass. I guess there are some families that go to midnight Mass and then they can go home and have some kind of meat snack because you don't want to eat a heavy meal at 1 a.m. But you do eat a heavy meal leading up to midnight. And I have been to Christmas Eve dinner, La Vigilia, in my friends' homes in Italy. And I've asked this question now for probably 30 years. Nobody in Italy ever heard of seven fish. Yes, it's a fish meal, but it's not necessarily seven. The number 7 is a magical number. I don't want to get into philosophy, but it's 4 corners of the earth, and the Trinity adds up to 7. So 7, and in other cultures, there's other reasons 7 is a magical number. So it's somehow settled on 7 fishes, although I have heard of 12 fishes, 1 for each apostle. But the 7 fishes is quite enough. Now, the traditional Southern Italian fish dishes for tonight, for Christmas Eve, are, well, let me just say that maybe the number 1, and the number 1 thing that nobody eats anyway, is capitone, eel. Some families, they fry the eel. Some families, they make it in sauce. Spaghetti with either clam sauce. Now, if you're Neapolitan, you may very well be having spaghetti with clam sauce tonight. I'm not sure. I never think, is it the number 1 spaghetti choice for all Neapolitans after tomato sauce or even before tomato sauce? But those two are the top. But so tonight you might have it with basically what we would call white clam sauce. Another traditional dish is, and by the way, it could be also a tomato with clams, but I don't see that very much. The one that's really popular is just white, just the juices from the clams, garlic, oil. And another one is, now on the Amalfi Coast and in Sorrento, which is just literally down the road a piece from Naples itself, a traditional Christmas Eve fish dish is spaghetti with sautéed walnuts and anchovies, or not anchovies, but colatura. Colatura is juices expressed by anchovies when they're put in barrels with salt to preserve them. And after several weeks in the barrel, the water is drained off, and they're left still in there, and more liquid will accumulate, and it'll actually have a red tinge to it. And that second dripping, and the word colatura means dripped, the second dripping is the precious colatura. I see it sold as essence of anchovy, which makes it sound like perfume, when in fact it's sort of stinky. but in Italian it's called colatura, and it's only made, to my knowledge, in 2 places, at either ends of the Bay of Salerno, which is the bay just south of the Bay of Naples. It's the Amalfi Coast side of the Bay of Salerno and the Palinuro side. And there are a couple of towns there where they make this colatura. Very precious thing, and it's a seasonal thing because it's not sold this year's crop is not, so to speak, is not sold until Christmas time. Another, and this may be after spaghetti with clam sauce, which I also adore, if it's well done. Often not well done. I would never order it in a restaurant, though. For that reason, who knows, unless you know. And no, the other thing is salt cod. Now, I don't know if this is still happening, but it used to be on SS, this is a road, 18, and that's a road that goes from Salerno all the way down the coast of Italy, really, because it goes way down. In some places, it's a nice highway. In other places, actually, there's a new one and old. The old, I once took the old and I regretted it because it really winds through and up and down the mountains, the Cilento, which is was interesting. Interesting in its sort of remote nothingness with an occasional town here or there. But in fact, SS-18 used to be lined with codfish, with salt cod stands at this time of the year. There would be these big stainless steel tanks where salt cod was refreshed, was soaked in water, but actually not soaked because these tanks had running water. And in fact, when I do salt cod at home these days, I used to just put it in a bowl with cold water and let it sit overnight, or maybe even 2 nights. But nowadays, I try to do it during the day and keep it in a bowl where the cold water is running in. It happens much faster. And my problem with salt cod, again, when you get it in a restaurant these days, is that it's over-soaked. It doesn't have any of its salt cod character anymore. And it's certainly not fresh fish. It's a different texture than fresh fish.
How long?
So, and I like a little bit of that salt cod character.
So how long?
Sort of and by the way, you can test this. You can eat salt cod raw. I mean, it's not raw because it's been salted and now you've refreshed it, but it's no rawer than eating sashimi. So in fact, this something I do with salt cod raw. So you can just cut off a sliver and taste it, and if it's still too salty, put it back in the water. Did you have a question, Jill?
That was sort of, is there a rule of thumb for length of soakage?
Well, it's at least 24 hours usually. But,
right.
It varies. It varies on the cod. It varies on the piece of cod, meaning the thick middle section, of course, takes longer to desalt than a thin piece. And what I do, I love salt cod, is after it's at the right saltiness, after a day or so, I slice off thin slices. I work at this, getting them nice and thin. You can't get them too thin because then they'll fall apart. But thin slices, and lay them out on a plate or platter, and dress them with olive oil, lemon juice, and hot pepper. And you eat it just like that. Delicious. And that would count, by the way,
as one of the fishes.
Another thing, now, if you want red sauce tonight, the thing to make is what Neapolitans call marinara, which is not plain tomato sauce. Marinara means wife of the mariner, wife of the fisherman. It ends in an A, remember. So marina, which means it's feminine. So it's marinara is the sauce of the fisherman, and the sauce of the fisherman always contains some kind of fish. Anchovies, very common. I mean, let's remember, anchovies are fish. In fact, extremely healthy fish. So anchovies is one, or tuna is another. And just to say, people are familiar with puttanesca, I think. Yes?
Yes.
Does
Everyone.
Everybody know what alla puttanesca is, which means in the style of the whore?
Yes, and that is...
mostly
that's the reason.
That word did not come into being till the 1950s. I actually have traced this with in fact, a primary resource, somebody who knew the man who, or his parents were, Franco is in his 80s now, but his parents were friends with the man who came up with this puttanesca, referring, by the way, to himself. He was a very flamboyant gay artist who lived on Ischia, which is in the Bay of Naples, just across from the city itself. There are ferries that go back and forth all day. But before that, it was known as, and still known as, marinara. And that's a tomato sauce with, as I said, either anchovies or tuna, olives, generally gaeta olives, cut up a little bit, capers, salt capers preferred over the ones that are packed in vinegar, which taste like pickled capers, which is what they are. But if you buy the ones that are packed in salt, which are now available in supermarkets, you will see that they have a much, much different flavor and aroma than the ones packed in vinegar. And all you do is, and they're preserved. So you can, I go through them quite quickly because I do a lot of things with them. But so I have a big jar on my shelf all the time. But, you can keep them a year. At some point, maybe after a year and a half, 2 years, if they haven't been kept in an airtight container, they'll dry out. Too much, probably. But even then, I've used them. But rarely do I get that far with them. So anyway, salt capers, anchovy, olives, and this is a place for hot pepper. And this is not a sauce with cheese. So those are sort of the main dishes of La Vigilia. Then, of course, every family has its own traditions, and I will never forget, I was just writing about this actually, my first Vigilia with Cecilia's family, 20-something years ago, and her mother was still alive. Well, her mother only died a few years ago. And we were all at, not at her mother's house, but at her sister's house. And the first course was smoked Norwegian salmon. And the second course was a salmon roe mousse. Do you remember that from the 1950s?
Yeah. And then what I remember also, just by the way, is how Tara Masalata sort of was something to be found during the year that was sort of close-ish to it.
Well, I don't understand what you said, but I'm going to move on here.
It's
and say that the next course
all right, never mind.
Was pickled herring. And I said to Cecilia and her sisters, all the sisters were there, by the way. There are 5 sisters. And I said to them, what is the story with this? We could be in Sweden, smoked salmon, salmon roe mousse, herring, and they said, well, herring is a lot like anchovies, and they're right, it's in the same family, and our father loved herring, pickled herring, so we continue that tradition. And then after these 3 courses, of course, we moved on to the more traditional Neapolitan things. Oh, by the way, this is one holiday, I have to say, where I don't see a lot of vegetables on the tables of my friends in southern Italy. But there is a salad that is sort of like giardiniera, which is a mixed pickle salad. But in this case, the base is fresh cauliflower. Of course, it's seasonal now. And with these green cauliflowers in the market right now, you could really make a very beautiful Christmas salad. And on top of the cooked cauliflower, you put olives. You can use both red, purple, and green, and some pickled peppers. Anyway, different pickled vegetables, and just dress it with. When you're ready to serve it, dress it with olive oil. And of course, you may or may not need some extra acid because most of these vegetables are already acidic. So that's it. That's my... so the 7 fishes thing has become a real big marketing tool. And I see even non-Italian restaurants around here are offering 7 fishes. And I just wanted to alert everybody that that is strictly Italian-American. So as Jill and Marshall know, I've been having some dental problems. And so I think I could, at this point, had a whole year of dental issues. No, they're problems. I could probably write a book on soft food. But I'm running out of... I mean, last week I was in sort of excruciating pain, and basically soup is it. I attempted some other things, but it never worked out.
What about potato pancakes, or how about pierogies?
For soft food?
Yeah.
Well, you know,
pancakes
I did have, and that was successful, I did have egg noodles with hot cheese, which is sort of one of my favorite things ever anyway.
Yeah, but that's soft. I mean, I would just think of the crunch.
That was soft enough.
Right.
You know, anyway, what I did was I started searching for some new easy food to make, and I discovered a great recipe in a book it's one of my go-to books, Classical Turkish Cooking by Ayla Algar, Traditional Turkish Food for the American Kitchen. I'm not sure that she compromised much in this book. This soup, maybe she made it up. It's so easy. It's the kind of thing I would make up if I knew to put these things together. But let me say, the basis was very good chicken broth that I had in the freezer. If I didn't have very good chicken broth, I'm sure I could have made do with boxed broth. But I'm sort of offended by the price of boxed broth.
Yeah.
Unless it's on sale, it seems to me a ripoff. Have you noticed? It's like
yes.
It could be $4 for a box of broth.
$4 to $5, absolutely right.
And you also have to keep an eye on those ingredients, because even
absolutely
the fancy so-called all organic have like high fructose corn syrup. It's just unbelievable.
I know. So I don't buy boxed broth unless I'm in a pinch, and then I buy collagen, which in fact is pretty pure. But anyway, I did have delicious broth in the freezer, and it's sort of like I always have broth in the freezer now. Right now, I actually have broth in the refrigerator because, and I think I'll have time, I made what I call magic chicken. The chicken itself went for 2 meals, and I have a lot of perfectly good cooking broth, but I'll get to that in a minute. So this is a super easy recipe. All you do is saute an onion. Ayla says 3/4 of a cup, but almost all my onions produce a cup. So I had 1 cup of chopped onion, which I sauteed in 2 tablespoons of butter until it was translucent, and not having any tomato puree to spare a tablespoon, which I thought was a sort of silly amount anyway. I used a tablespoon of tomato paste, and I put it in the pan with the onion and the butter, and I smushed it in. Very technical word, smush. And when it was sort of incorporated, I added 7 cups of chicken broth. If you have meat broth, I rarely have meat broth, but I mostly have chicken broth. You can use meat broth. This needs broth. I often cook soups just with water, but this needs broth. So you put in your 7 cups of broth, and this is bulgur lentil soup. A 1/2 cup of bulgur. I use fine bulgur for this. You could use coarser bulgur, but the soup will, of course, have more texture, so to speak. Well, and it has some anyway. And the 1/2 cup of red lentils. Red lentils dissolve, and so they'll give the soup a nice color, but you won't see lentils in the end. In fact, after just a few minutes, you won't see lentils. And so you let that simmer together, not terribly long, 15 minutes, and then remove it from the heat. I mean, maybe 20 minutes. It depends on the bulgur, I find, because it depends on the texture of the bulgur. But it should all be very soft. And you're going to make a little roux on the side with 2 tablespoons of butter and 2 tablespoons of flour. Now, this is not going to thicken all that soup so much, but it does provide what I think is a necessary liaison, binding, that pulls the whole thing together. So 2 tablespoons of flour, 2 tablespoons of butter. I put it in my little butter melting pan, and cook it together for about 2 minutes. Then stir that into the soup, and let it simmer for another couple of minutes. And then, this is the final thing, and is mint, dried mint, and dried thyme. I do not scorn dried herbs. And in fact, I keep a nice group of dried herbs in the house because of moments like this. Because I have everything with my nice broth in the freezer. I had everything in the house to make this. I didn't have to leave to go shopping. I always keep red lentils around, which I have discovered are a really good thickening for instance, beef stew. Instead of making a roux, put in some red lentils in, and it'll thicken it naturally and with a nice flavor, but not overwhelming flavor. So that's it. This soup, so a whole teaspoon of dried thyme, put it in the palm of one hand, rub it with the heel of your other hand, and let it fall into the pot. And the same thing with a quarter of a cup. You heard me right, a quarter of a cup of dried mint. And that you'll have to do in 2 or 3 doses, putting it in one hand and rubbing it with the other. Again, let it just fall right in the pot. And now, this is at your discretion, hot pepper. I would have liked this soup to be hotter than how I made it, but I have somebody to feed here who doesn't like hot pepper. So, Isla says a quarter of a teaspoon. I would have liked a half a teaspoon for myself, but a quarter of a teaspoon was fine. Hot pepper. And that's it. As you can tell, there's not even very much fat. This is a nice amount of soup for 3 people, 4 people.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
healthy soup, too.
Yeah, sounds it.
Yeah.
All right.
And so...
I have been able to eat cooked vegetables. So we've been eating a lot of cooked vegetables.
All right. So
what are you going to have for Chinese food tonight?
No, not tonight.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
He
I'm all
said
mixed
Tomorrow we're
up
going to
here.
go out for dim sum.
He's...
I'm coming over.
There finally are several movies to see.
All right.
There's been nothing for months. Well, I shouldn't say nothing. I highly recommend The Green Book.
All right. All right.
Well...
So I don't know. I'm going to hide out tonight because
otherwise you'll have to eat one of the 7 fishes.
That's right.
the best spaghetti with clam sauce I ever had was made by, can I say, an old lady. She's at least 90, still kicking, still cooking, on Long Island. And all this year I've been wanting to go out there and make clam sauce with her. I think I'll call her today, wish her Merry Christmas.
All right.
And then maybe she'll tell me what she does with her.
I was just going to say, and get the recipe. Happy Christmas.
It makes it so special.
That's right.
Okay. On that note.
We will expect a report. No, I think that's appropriate. All right. Happy...
All right. Everybody have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, but we'll talk before New Year.
That's right. We'll talk.
But
Still talk.
as I said,
opening this year.
This morning, I can't believe it's Christmas.
That's right.
Just wait till...
I'm only semi-unprepared. I was prepared for my nieces this weekend.
All right. Well, you'll see how you are next week. You'll say, I can't believe it's another year.
Well, enjoy
Well, you know what? I'm considering baking a cake for Christmas. And you're going to laugh, but it's a cake based on cake mix that I made. I'll talk about it next week.
Okay.
I think as our treat for Christmas, we'll come home from dim sum and the movies, and then eat chocolate cake.
I think that's a really good plan. All right.
All righty.
Thanks.
Take care, Kai.
Take care. Arthur Schwartz, the Food Maven, here on Robin Hood Radio. Underwriting support for Arthur Schwartz, the Food Maven, from Hathaway Young, located on South Center Street in Millerton. Flawless catering and event planning, hathawayyoung.com. John Andrews Restaurant on the Hillsdale Road in South Egremont, 413-528-3467. On the web, jarestaurant.com. Rubiners Cheesemongers and Grocers on Main Street in Great Barrington, 413-528-0488, rubiners.com. In Hillsdale, New York, Hillsdale Home Chef with 2 beautiful teaching classes, and they've got classes to go in those cooking rooms. More information, 518-325-7000, hgshomechef.com. And Haven Cafe in Lenox, Massachusetts, offering quality food and excellent service. From a fresh cup of great coffee to healthy, delicious breakfast, or sit down with a dinner with a tasty, life-enhancing meal that you can take home. Also, they feature catering, supporting local organic farmers, environmentally conscious, and epicurious distributors, havencafebakery.com.